Hello, everybody. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and I am, in fact, a failure. I'm here with co-host.
Hello, I'm Ariella Steinhorn. I'm a writer and a journalist, a former publicist. I still do some PR work sometimes. And yeah, I help people tell sensitive stories about power and bring those stories to light.
Do you watch Mythic Quest at all?
I don't.
Highly recommend. There's a
Okay.
really good scene in the last episode where they've been like subpoenaed by Congress, and these two people go, um, and one's a white guy, obviously, and the other's like a very successful lesbian woman,
Hmm.
and she starts to say something really bad, and the guy's like on the mic in front of Congress and everything, basically insulting Congress. He jumps in, and the congresswoman is like, his name is David. David, are you proposing to speak for a woman right now? And it was kind of funny. He was like, no, no, I would never do that. And then she like doubled down and was like mocking Congress because she's like a very type A personality. And he was like, now I'm gonna just go ahead and do it. I've decided this is the least of all evils. And in watching that, it reminded me of the criticism I'm getting of these shows with you, where apparently I'm talking over you. People have said.
Really?
I don't I think
I
I'm being very careful, but
I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
that you do. Where has that been like a recurring comment?
Three people in my personal life say I talk over you.
Oh man.
They may be
I
projecting.
don't, I don't feel that way, and I have felt talked over before by people,
I
but not.
think you would correct me. You would set me straight if I was talking over you.
I
I
would,
is my
yeah,
opinion. Yeah. So it is what it is. Well, I'll try better, I guess. I'll try harder.
yeah. You have to be
Oh, we froze.
quiet this entire video, Vince.
I mean, that would be incredibly relaxing. If you just want to carry the load, by all means, I'll sign me up. That sounds great. Um,
Okay,
oh,
we have a few news stories today.
I'm excited.
Um,
Where we
One
starting?
is actually a victory for a trans worker. I know the last time we talked about how trans people are not being in certain states seen or um, chosen, like basically designated as a protected class, or just
Hmm.
trying to change it so that they're not designated as a protected class. But this story was about a McDonald's worker who was fired. She's trans and she reported the harassment and she won almost $1 million, $900,000.
Love that.
So she was openly mocked by her coworkers and bosses who refused to use her chosen name. She was reprimanded for using the women's bathroom. Uh, she she made multiple complaints alleging discrimination, but nobody cared. And she filed an employment discrimination lawsuit against the company that operates the franchise. And then they denied that she was harassed and discriminated against, and said that they had no choice but to fire her because she was undocumented at the time. But then, after an 8-day trial, a jury in August made a verdict under the DC Human Rights Act and found that she was subjected to a hostile work environment. And she was awarded nearly $1 million in damages. So that's a positive story.
That's a very positive story. It's extra positive for two reasons. Big win for somebody who was undocumented, because those
Mhm.
cases can be tough because there is that defense like, hey, listen, it's federal law. I didn't want to fire you. It's just federal law. Like, I have to do it. It's not my fault. So that's a big win there. And then obviously, listen, these wins for gender identity cases are so meaningful. One, because the community has horrible things happening to it, but two, it lets other firms see money getting made,
Mhm.
and then they'll seek to help more. Many firms are currently reluctant, not because they don't want to help trans people, but
Yeah.
because these cases don't win at the same rate. And some of the plaintiffs have trouble sticking with the cases because they're going through so much and they're under such load. And or at least that's the perception. I'm not even saying that's true. That is a perception of some firms. And obviously we bring these cases, but like seeing the
Right.
wins means that the fence sitters and the firms that were like, I don't know about those cases, maybe they're not right for us, will look at this and say 900K, that's 350
Mhm.
for me. Okay, well, let's get in the game. And listen, is that the right reason to help? Not necessarily, but more help is more help. So like, I'm excited about that for sure.
For sure.
especially in a time. Yeah.
Have you ever brought any cases? I guess this was the DC Human Rights Act.
No,
Uh,
never.
okay.
I'm not going to say never. I have not personally done it. There's a good chance somebody in the firm has used it, but
Mhm.
I have never personally used the Human Rights Act. I've heard it's similar to the New York State and New York City human rights laws.
Mm, interesting. And yeah, this one went to trial. So I guess it's
It's huge.
like when
Yeah.
it was brought in front of a group of people who were unbiased and just saw the facts, they were like, this person deserves financial compensation for what she went through.
I bet it went to trial specifically because the defense thought they didn't have to settle because of
Mm,
that undocumented status. That's quite a
interesting.
defense, right? Like they're just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So federal law, it's actually a crime for me to not fire you. And that's a pretty compelling argument, right? So hats off to
Mm,
that trial attorney. That's not why I took my hat off, but works out well.
yeah. And now this woman has asylum. She got
That's
asylum
amazing.
for
Does she have
20.
asylum tied to the gender identity case or the gender identity protected class?
I'm not sure.
There's a
I don't
lot of countries where that's real. If you go back and you've
Interesting.
transitioned, you could be killed. I think that's a
Yeah.
compelling
Well,
argument.
she's from El Salvador, so
That
potentially.
sounds,
I mean, I doubt that they're that friendly to trans people there,
yeah.
right?
I'm not making fun of El Salvador here, but maybe.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, now she works in she works at a clinic that helps clients get tested for sexually transmitted diseases. So yeah, I
Oh,
feel like we often
amazing.
talk about like doom and gloom, but this was actually a positive story. And
Thank
then,
you.
of course, the trial, to your point, the trial team was featured in this Washington Post article, standing defiantly in front of the McDonald's, which is great.
I don't know.
Her
I'm excited for this trial team.
Yeah, no, they look amazing.
Okay.
We did it. Okay, so what's next?
I think we're looking at, oh,
Meta.
I'm not allowed to see the Business Insider.
I
For
know
whatever reason, Business Insider
there's
said
paywall.
no to
Business
me seeing this
Insider has a
article.
really aggressive paywall, and I even have a subscription, but
Wow.
somehow I'm locked out.
Oh, interesting.
But apparently, Meta has a block list that bars the rehiring of some former employees. What are your thoughts on that?
So, a couple thoughts. I mean, the easy answer is Meta and every other employer in the nation has a do not hire list. I mean, that's not surprising. I think the reasons people are on the do not hire list at Meta might be pretty questionable in some
Mm,
cases. Listen, some of them are just going to be like, "Oh, you leaked information."
right,
Okay,
right.
that sounds pretty legit. Like in the scheme of things, in a tech company hiding tech secrets, fair enough. Um, but also, listen, I've been my last 2 weeks have been working on Meta layoff situations 60-70% of the time. So, and that's morning to night. It just is what it is. So, Meta's a mess right now. The amount of litigation they've generated with that recent layoff, which they
Yeah, do you
know.
think that I remember you mentioned that, sorry, now I'm cutting you off, but
No, please do.
I remember you mentioned that they had really beefed up their employment law team,
Yeah.
like to prepare for all of this. But do you think they made a mistake in how they're going about doing this, just in terms of the sheer cost, or do they not care? Is it like pennies to them ultimately?
So the best we can figure it is that they looked at the value of the unvested RSUs and
Mm,
they did some quick math on how many of these cases would go to litigation. And they said, hey, if we do this, we're going to recapture so much money in those unvested RSUs
mhm.
that will be able to pay off this litigation and still end up ahead. This layoff will pay for itself no matter how much litigation it causes. That's the
Yeah.
best I can figure. It's just a pure dollars and cents. And they wanted to get rid of people with accommodations and people who had maternity leave and paternity leave and apparently people over a certain age. So
Mm.
at that point, they just did the math and said, oh, yeah, we can afford that. We come out ahead. I think that's my read of the situation. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that has to be the case because otherwise yeah. But then I guess the workforce is probably just going to be increasingly young, probably more childless than not. People who are just like go to work, kind of Severance style. Have you seen that show Severance on
No, I
Apple
really want to. I want to see it.
That's like their dream is though in the TV show, this is not a huge spoiler, but the setup doesn't work very well, where people's brains are split between their work selves and their, which is called an innie, and their outside selves, like their personal life selves, which is called an outie. um, so I feel like that would be Meta's dream, just to have a bunch of employees who like clock in and clock out and don't really have feelings
Oh
about
wow.
things. They're just like doing what they're just doing their tasks and they don't have lives really outside of that.
That's so interesting. I had a conversation. Maybe I'm complicit in that culture. I had a conversation with a young attorney who does not work for me
Yeah.
yesterday, where I was like, "Hey, man, the things you're describing would all be fixed if you stop going straight home from work. Like, you can't fight about hate crimes for 10 hours, screaming everything, and then just go home. You got to go somewhere first. You got to go to the gym. You need a transitional period, something, whether it's see a friend, have a drink. What, probably not a drink because that gets out of hand quick. But like, you need to do something to transition. You can't just go home to your spouse or your kids or whatever it is. And his take was like, well, then there wouldn't be enough time. I wouldn't get home until like 8. And I'm like, okay. I mean, listen, you can get home at 8 and not have a divorce, or you can get home at 6:30 and good luck. Like, it just my experience, seeing a lot of people do this in this industry. It just seems like you can't go straight home. And he was like, okay, I'll try it.
No. Or you just have to have like such a good balance of other things that you do, which I guess is what you're referring to. Like you have to have a period of time that's like to yourself, or that like resets your brain chemistry if you've been like seeing horrific things every day and then you need to go to, I don't know, see some comedy with a friend or go like throw axes at a wall, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just hard. It's hard to go from a box of revenge porn, literally just thumbing through horrific images, and then just be like, okay, I'm going to be a good partner or a good parent now. Like, it just doesn't, you
Well,
can't
and
go
even
direct.
if you repress your feelings about it, so you come home and you're like, you say to yourself, I'm compartmentalizing, you can't really compartmentalize. Like it will surface if you're seeing revenge porn every day and then you come home and pretend that everything's fine. It will bubble up and surface in you in some way.
Best case, it jades you. Worst case, God help you. Like, it's really, it's ugly. But yeah, I don't know. I think you do need that, whether it's alone time, even a video game. Like, years ago, I bought somebody like a TV and an Xbox or whatever in the office. People are like, why would you do that? I was like, because he can't go home. He's got to sit and play video games for an hour. Like, he can't go home. And it worked ish.
Yeah.
It sort of
Some
kind
form
of
of
worked.
escapism and just like forget, like
Yeah.
not forgetting, but just resetting. I think
Yeah.
we have to reset our brains. But yeah, I think with the block lists and Meta, I just think there are some people, myself included, I lump myself into this. Like, I will never go back to work for a tech company again. I just can't do it. The way I'm wired, the way I'm like, what I enjoy in life, like how I talk to people, how I want to be
Yeah.
more open than not, like, I just will never go back. And there are some people who I think will always just be better on the outside, which is hard because, but there are other industries. Like I saw this post on LinkedIn, this woman who used to be head of DEI at Uber. She
Hmm.
said there's some software engineers who she advises just don't go back to tech. Go to consumer packaged goods or retail,
Oh,
or like just don't go back to tech. You're never going to fit into the culture, or at least for the foreseeable future. And if you are wired a certain way, just go elsewhere.
that's so interesting. Not even startups?
No, I don't. I mean, maybe startups that are focused on, I don't know. I think though tech, anything that's venture capital funded or has
Yeah.
to report to shareholders in the system of shareholder capitalism is they have like one incentive for the venture capital funded startups. It's to make money for their LPs, for like the limited partners who the venture capitalists have to pay back, and then for these public companies is to pay back their shareholders. Literally nothing else matters. So if like you cannot, if like that, if you know that that can't be your North Star for whatever reason, like you just don't care enough, or you are more socially conscious, or you don't want to, or you want to bring your whole self to work, or whatever it may be, I
Yeah.
think that, yeah, you shouldn't, I mean, not shouldn't, maybe you can, but you're not going to fit in there, I don't think. And I think it's worse longer term the more you stay in an environment. I don't know, but it goes to the question of, can you change a place from the inside out, or do you have to go on the outside and just leave it in order to create a different sort of ecosystem? So I think that's what a lot of tech workers are grappling with right now, because a lot of them think, oh, I can like be in on the inside and do the things that I have like massive impact on the inside.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, they have a bad boss or layoffs, or the company just like shifts what they're doing to like fit into these financial goals. I don't think that, I think people, their illusions get shattered very quickly.
Yeah. There's a lot of passive resistance. I don't have a ton of exposure to the VC culture, but like the exposure I do have just seems to reflect that they're not even aware of a lot of the disagreement. Like it's interesting. So I got invited many years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I got invited to like a dim sum dinner with Jason Calacanis, a really big, quasi famous like VC and podcaster, whatever. And I was at the time dating a very successful woman, and I got head of plus one, so she came, and we weren't together very long. And like in that meeting, she very clearly decided to like make a run at Jason Calacanis. Like she was gonna like maybe get a date or whatever. I don't know. And it was like pretty open. I to the extent that I was like, "Oh, is this happening right now?" And she was like, "Sorry, buddy, it's happening." And I will say that like he never even noticed. He never noticed. Like she went hard. I literally was sitting there just like, okay, so we're very clearly over. And she's like, oh yeah, this is happening. I'm like, okay, that was the level that she was at going at this guy. And I swear to God, was not being not a, listen, he's a very controversial guy, but like wasn't bad to me. He just didn't notice. It wasn't like he was such a gentleman. He was just like, yeah, I don't think I want to talk about it. He actually said that. He was like, yeah, I don't think I'm interested in talking about this to her. And she was just like, uh, uh, like it was wild to watch. And then I've always thought about that. Like he didn't even know.
Sometimes I wonder, having worked with some of these people, some of them are very sexually motivated. Some of them are asexual, like truly asexual. And I think that they're almost robotic. And if you even think about Elon Musk and the fact that he's, spraying his sperm around, but I don't think he's actually having sex with women. He's just like sending vials of his sperm to women who he believes.
That imagery, my God, my God.
Like, so I think that there's a level in the tech world of asexuality among certain people who just are into like being as efficient as possible, as like dominating industry, like being as efficient as possible as a strategy. To me, like, yes, it could work for business, but that sounds like a horrible romance. Like
I
maybe it
don't
works
know.
for some people, but that doesn't sound especially romantic to me.
My impression of this guy was he was interested in talking shit, his bulldogs, and making money in that order. Like that was
Yeah.
like his passions. And like somebody thinking that like I do pretty well in Manhattan, I'm sure I could get this guy. He was like, I'm sorry, you are neither money nor a bulldog. I don't know. Like all that's left is talking shit. Like he just it didn't
Yeah.
exist in his world at all. It was fascinating to watch. But I've always thought about that, just like the idea of like pushing change on someone like that who doesn't even notice the like some percentage of human interaction doesn't exist to that human, you know?
Right. Well,
And I'm
because
not
I
saying he's on the spectrum. I'm just saying like it
could be.
didn't
A lot of them
didn't
are.
matter to him, you know?
Yeah, like human interaction is not as interesting to them. as like game theory and yes, talking shit about your opponents and like
Yeah,
winning some war. That this is always so funny to me about winning, that I feel once you've won, there's always something that you're going to lose. So it's just this constant like desire to win over and over and over, which just sounds exhausting and not very fun. But I think that they probably see it as intellectually stimulating, or like to their computer brains it's stimulating. And but yeah, they
the
don't
constant need to win. I think you're describing law firm life.
but I feel like you also, I don't know, the lawyers I know, I'm sure there are lawyers of all kinds, but like yes, you have to win, but it's like deeply human as well. I don't
Yeah,
know, you have to have a level of emotional intelligence. And then you also
100%.
there's like you're representing clients and you're representing people. So you're doing it on behalf of somebody else rather than just like winning for yourself for who knows what reason. I don't know. I'm not
Yeah,
saying lose or people should like want to lose in life, but I think
yeah,
the obsession with winning is a little bit extreme these days, just in every industry.
yeah. I mean, every law firm does have a number, like a percentage of cases that, if lost, they cease to exist. There's no plaintiff side firm. There's no firm who works on a contingency that doesn't know that number. You know, and
Mhm. Yeah.
like we're very fortunate we never flirt with that number in a given year, but there's firms where they know, they're like, yeah, we're one away. Like this year, like it's been a real bad year. We're one away. And then everybody's just sitting there like watching that last trial. Do I have a job next year? You know, and so that is a pressure cooker of sorts.
Do
I don't
Yeah.
know. But
Do you
yeah,
feel like that's dependent on like who the clients are, what the cases are that the law firms are taking on, or the
yeah,
quality, like the caliber of the lawyers, or both?
100%. If you
Yeah.
don't have the selection, if you're dealing with the bottom third of cases, because those are the cases that you can get as a firm,
Mhm.
you're gonna play with that number every year, and it's only a matter of time until you end up losing a few too many, but unfortunately. See, then there's this flight to the better cases, but then not everybody gets help. So sorry, I know we're doing current events. I'm talking economics.
Insider legal economics.
What's
Okay.
next?
So I thought this was an interesting study out of the Harvard Business Review, that when employees witness disproportionate pay for C-suite executives, um, they can whistleblow more. So basically, if your CEO is making, $20 million a year, and there's like a large delta between what the executives are making and what the people are making, I guess that makes sense, right? That they would
Yeah, it's fuck you money,
feel
right?
underappreciated, and that they would feel like they have to rebel.
Oh, are you saying if they make a lot of money, they're more likely to whistleblow, or if they make a lot of
No,
money,
if
they're less?
CEOs make a lot of money and the delta, like say they feel that they're being paid unfairly.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the bigger the gap between the C-suite salaries and like the workers' salaries, the greater likelihood there is that people whistleblow.
Interesting. Yeah, I can
Like
see that.
willingness to report a health-related issue, like inadequate ventilation to OSHA,
Yeah.
reduction in employee sense of loyalty towards the firm. I think I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does. Even if that CEO is worth every penny of that 20 mil, like it just, the employees are never going to think that, you know?
No, no,
Never, never.
they're not.